session, I'm going to talk about the fixed income securities and what are the different kinds of R packages as well as the various important functions associated with different R packages which can help us in solving various or understanding various topics associated with fixed income securities. So as a broad agenda, we'll look at what are the fixed income securities, then how do we measure the market risk that is associated with various fixed income securities. So here is where we'll talk about the different techniques to measure the market risk. We'll be covering duration, we'll be covering convexity. Now here let me tell you, if I am doing the theoretical way of understanding all these topics, then there are formulae and there are some kind of calculations that we may have to do. But thanks to the different kinds of packages that are available in R, all these things we are restricting ourselves only to the interpretations. The computations are typically taken care by the different tools, different formulas of R. So that's where we'll see. First of all, we'll understand the various measures of market risk, and then we'll be seeing how do we implement these things in R. So that's one part. Coming to the next part, we look at a fixed income portfolio. If at all I have invested in various fixed income securities. So there is some amount of risk associated with this entire portfolio. Now, how do I really immunize it? First of all, what is meant by immunization and how do I really immunize this portfolio? Right? If the interest rates changes, how do I make sure that my portfolio really does not lose heavily? Right? So we'll be dealing with a few of the mechanisms for that. But the major part towards the end is in terms of if I have a convertible bond, a bond which can be converted into shares. If I have a convertible bond, how do I really do the pricing for that particular bond? So these are the various things we are going to cover in detail as a part of this particular session. So let's get it. Key objective of fixed income portfolio management. When I talk about portfolio management, my intention is to reduce the risk, right? And this kind of a portfolio I am creating only with fixed income securities, which means I am not using the stocks in this portfolio. I am not using any other commodities or currencies or anything. It's only the fixed income securities, which are the bonds, are being used as a part of the creation of the portfolio. So I am creating a portfolio containing only the fixed income securities. So fixed income securities, different kinds of securities will have different amount of risks. The risk is mostly associated with their credit ratings. So we have different kinds of risks and accordingly we have different kinds of returns that they are providing. Now, as a part of the fixed income portfolio management, my intention is to allocate the funds to various fixed income securities. So here, just like any other portfolio management objective, I want to maximize my return and I want to minimize my risk. I want the investment or the allocation of funds in such a way that the overall expected return should be higher and the risk should be as low as possible. And this is where I define my investment objectives, and based on the investment objectives, the allocation to the various funds happen accordingly. Now, coming to the process of doing this fixed income portfolio management, the yield curve, there is a dynamic modeling that is required. When I am talking about the yield curve, how the interest rates of different periods I'm talking about the 6 month interest rate, 3 months interest rate, 1 year interest rate, different kinds of interest rates across time, how they keep changing, right? Is it a upward sloping or downward sloping or flat? What is the kind of a shape of the yield curve? How the yield curve is changing with respect to time? All these things require a dynamic modeling. Then, with respect to many of the fixed income securities, there is a possibility of a prepayment. Two major forms of fixed income securities, if I see, one, the loans. There could be a early payment of the loans. So that comes under the prepayment behavior. And when I talk about the bonds, we have callable bonds where the prepayment can very well happen. So there is a possibility of a prepayment behavior associated with these fixed income securities. So I need to have models which can effectively handle this prepayment behavior. And the third important aspect, which is a significant thing with respect to many fixed income securities, is the default. So there is a possibility that the party who has borrowed might default on the transaction. So these are the three key aspects. If I am talking about a very simple fixed income security, then a lot of things are straightforward. But once I start understanding that the yield curve is going to change drastically or dynamically with time, fixed income securities are exposed more and more to prepayment behaviors, so that needs to be handled effectively. And default is another key aspect that goes into many of the fixed income securities. So we need to have a process on how to really model all these aspects. Then coming to the different kinds of tools, we use the time series analysis heavily. Different aspects of the time series analysis comes into picture. Stochastic processes, especially when I have to model the prepayment behavior, because there's a lot of randomness on when people are going to prepay, when people are going to default, on what kind of process. So there is something more associated to the default behaviors associated with the prepayment behavior. So we treat those kind of processes as stochastic processes and try to handle them. Then optimization comes up because we want to maximize the expected returns while trying to minimize the risk that is associated with the investment. So this is where we try to use different kinds of tools for doing a effective fixed income portfolio management. Now coming to the various risks, we have already talked about two major risks, one being the credit risk, two being the market risk. When it comes to credit risk, where there is a possibility of a default, so major activities that come in, there could be a possibility of a default, there could be a downgrading of that security, which could also cause a kind of loss on the security. So when I have to reduce my credit risk, I'll handle only those securities which have a predetermined default risk, which is like minimum credit rating. The default risk is more and more associated with the credit rating. So I'll try to select those kind of securities which have a minimum credit rating, so that I won't face a loss beyond a particular point while investing in those securities. Similarly, I would be choosing proper liquidity characteristics so that the volumes, the buy and sell volumes are not so lesser. I should be able to sell my security at a price when I wish. I should be able to buy the security at a specific price when I wish. I should not really get into a situation that I am forced to sell it at a much lesser price because of non-adequate market available for that particular product. Similarly, in a fixed income security, the other problem, other risk majorly is market risk, wherein the change in the market values could result in a kind of fall in the value of the portfolio. So probably there could be a change in the interest rates which could impact the value of the portfolio. So some kind of market variables which could impact the value of the portfolio. So this is where we use certain techniques. We use duration, we'll talk about them, modified duration, keynote